Hello, my name is Taylor Fogarty, and this is my HOD Capstone Learning Evidence on how to create a lesson plan. My learning goal was to create a guided reading lesson plan for kindergartners and to teach it using effective classroom management techniques. This screencast is going to cover best practices for teaching at the kindergarten level, specifically lesson planning and classroom management techniques that are specific to the 5 to 6-year-old age range and academic level. These lesson planning and classroom management techniques I found through both my internal and external research. When it comes to my internal research, it is important to note that both the curriculum and classroom management at KIPP Antioch College Prep, where I completed my HOD capstone internship, is specific to the KIPP network of charter schools and that they follow a no excuses model of behavior management. Additionally, when it comes to reading instruction, KIPP is aligned with the National STEP reading program. Both of these programs have influenced my learnings and will be further discussed later on at this screencast. At the beginning of my learning goal, I would rotate and observe the daily reading instruction block in each classroom for an hour a day. These observations took place in the first quarter of the school year, and one of the main problems when it comes to teaching very beginning level readers is that all students come into the school year with a different amount of baseline knowledge. As a kindergartner teacher with 30 students with a level of variance of prior knowledge and foundational reading level skills that can vary from being able to read very basic books on their own to not knowing the letters of the alphabet at all. This is very important when it comes to lesson planning because at the beginning of the school year, you need to understand where you need to start. So, when it comes to guided reading smaller groups, the first thing that you do is divide students into small groups of 5 to 6 based on their reading level. In this example, the students are at a reading level A, which is the lowest level of readers. This is pre-reading very basic skills, teaching letters and letter sounds. But since guided reading is an instructional lesson with direct teacher support, for the lesson you will select a higher level book that pushes their reading skills because of the additional teacher support that they have in this small group environment. For this group, perhaps a level B or C book will be selected and taught by the instructor. Once you determine the level of the book, then you set a goal for the lesson plan that is appropriate for the reading level, such as the goal for this book is to establish if the book is fiction or nonfiction. Once you have decided on the lesson you want to teach that day, then you decide which text showcases this lesson best. Many of the teachers at KIPP say that it's always very tempting to see a book that you think students will really enjoy and to try to go backwards and plan a lesson around that. But it's much more effective to establish the lesson and then select the text. Once you choose the text, you plan your introduction to the lesson. At the beginning of the lesson, you always want to preface what the goal of the lesson is in language that resonates with the children. So, in this case, you would say, "Hi students, today we are going to learn about the difference between fiction and nonfiction books. A fiction book is a story that is made up by the author, that is not real life. A nonfiction book is a text that teaches you about real things." Then you'll choose a technique that will help them understand the lesson target. In this case, a very common technique to use with beginning level readers is a picture walk. A picture walk is where you walk through the illustrations in order to familiarize students with an unfamiliar text before you even begin reading it. So basically, you have the students flip through the pages of the book, look at pictures, and you prompt them with questions such as, "What do you think is going on here?" and point to a specific picture, and let them, before they've even started reading the text, try to guess what the story is going to be about just based on the pictures. The teachers at KIPP Antioch College Prep say that this is the time previewing the text is so important to the overall comprehension of the text to be framing it correctly before the students even start reading. The key is to ask plenty of questions that will engage kids' imaginations and encourage active participation in the upcoming lesson. Once you have framed the introduction to the lesson, students will read the text on their own with support from the instructor, but this is not a part of the lesson planning process. The next step in the lesson planning process is to craft questions for when students have finished reading the book. When preparing these questions, you want a variety of difficulty level, with some easy questions and some harder questions. For example, an easy question is just repeating something that is explicitly stated in the text. More high-level questions are those that are like, why do you think the author wrote this story? Or, how do you think the character feels about blank? These questions are questions that students have to think about and formulate opinions around rather than repeating something that was explicitly stated in the text. These questions will lead to a productive discussion and allow you to unpack what the students have just read. One of the key elements for a productive guided reading lesson is having a very well managed and the right classroom environment. The size of the reading groups is very important. The reading groups should be around 5 to 6 students because this is a good number to work with. According to the University of Sydney School of Education and Social Work, 5 is the ideal group size because this allows for a diverse group of students, but is small enough for students all to be instructed at the same time. The classroom setup is additionally very important. These small guided reading lessons should be taught at smaller side tables inside the classroom that are located in quieter sections of the classroom. In this slide, you will see these U-shaped tables are the guided reading tables. 2 guided reading groups could take place at the same time within the classroom, but having them in the corners and having students face away from other distractions in the center of the classroom is very important. The ideal length of a guided reading lesson is 15 to 17 minutes. This is long enough for students to read the book and have ample time for discussion before and after the text. While this length of time is long enough for students to get through all the material, it is not a dragged out amount of time where you will lose students' attention. For my informational interviews, I talked a lot about how the no excuses policies and classroom management techniques influence the way that lessons are taught. This is an example lesson that is typical at a KIPP Antioch College Prep kindergarten classroom. These are sight words, and this is...
The first word is this. The word is this. What's the word? This. Some. The word is some. What's the word? Some. Good. The word is good. What's the word? Good. Think. The word is think. What's the word? Think. Shall. The word is shall. What's the word? Shall.
This example lesson is very typical for any different subject at KIPP Antioch College Prep. Hand motions and very repetitive language is very common. Students are expected to shout in response to what's the word? They're in unison will say think. The word is think, using the hand motion as well. Active participation in a really formal kind of drill sergeant-esque mindset is typical in these classrooms. Additionally, from my informational interviews with the teachers, I also found, through outside additional research, 5 classroom management techniques that are specifically pertinent to effectively teaching guided reading lessons. These classroom management techniques are influenced by the no excuses style of instruction that KIPP utilizes, and this is apparent in the level of accountability that is required for each student's behavior. The first classroom management technique is that teachers should model the ideal behavior that they expect of students. This includes things such as maintaining eye contact, modeling an example answer using a complete sentence, and not interrupting students. Doing these things as the instructor and also reminding and correcting students' behavior during these small group sessions is more targeted than correcting behavior during a full class session. At KIPP, when a bad behavior occurs or a student fails to correct behavior even after being instructed to change, they receive a check. A check is a warning that a student is given when they are not behaving in a way that is okay and that they need to change their behavior. A second classroom management technique that teachers use at KIPP is following through and really tracking checks when they give them to students. All checks are tracked via a clipboard, and each check is recorded by a teacher or an assistant teacher. Other school faculty members are also able to give checks, and they always make sure to relay that message to the teacher so they are accurately reflected at the end of the day. At KIPP, 3 checks result in a color change that is written down and sent home on the daily behavior report that is expected to be signed by parents and returned back to school the next day. By actually tracking and following through on checks, the students know what they mean and they really take them seriously and respect the system. This also gives teachers a level of accountability as well, that students are all treated equal with the checks and that checks mean the same thing across students. A third classroom management technique is being very intentional when you select the members of a small group. Choosing a group with a variety of different personalities, for example, a mix of high and low talkers, will allow for a more balanced group that is overall easier to manage. However, when organizing groups, students' reading ability should be very similar so that instruction is applicable to all students. One thing that is specific to KIPP Antioch College Prep is that with a very high number of English language learner students that are very beginning readers, it is important not to silo these students into groups of only English language learner students. By having them be mixed into groups with other native English speakers, you're going to push their ability greater and also not ostracize them into groups by themselves. So this is a really important thing that I observed through my time at KIPP. An additional fourth aspect that goes off this point is that teachers should make these guided reading groups a fun experience where students have group identity. A large aspect of group membership is having a sense of belonging and pride of being in that group. The teacher should make each group feel special and excited about guided reading small groups. One thing that is fun that teachers at KIPP do is that they assign guided reading groups a team name, such as Rainbows, Sunshine, or Snickers. These allow students to have a fun way to identify their group and associate it with positive things. In outside research, I found that group membership influences friendships inside and outside the classroom. And additionally, cooperative groups encourage friendships among a diverse range of students. So, by making these groups very intentional and very diverse, this will also encourage group identity and really bonds within the classroom environment. A fifth and final classroom management technique and instructional teaching tip is to make reading instruction fun and easy for students to remember. For example, if you want students to use their finger to track words as they read it, you would start by using your pointer finger and naming it something fun like Bouncy Bunny. You would explain to students that good readers use their Bouncy Bunny and that the Bouncy Bunny hops and touches each word as they read it. The Bouncy Bunny is a fun, interactive way for students to remember to do an important thing, which is to track each word as they read it. Once you establish a tool like Bouncy Bunny, making a sign or having a stuffed animal bunny that is at or displayed right near your guided reading table reminds students to use this tool even before they are prompted by the instructor. Having something fun and cute like Bouncy Bunny makes things like tracking words seem like a little bit more exciting and fun experience. Overall, teaching an effective guided reading lesson takes a great deal of preparation and organization. I found it most helpful to watch many different teachers conduct these guided reading lessons because personal teaching styles are very different, so it is nice to be able to see a different range of instructional techniques. It is also very encouraging that you are able to really place your own personal spin on guided reading teaching lessons, and making the content really fun for students is at the discretion of the teacher.